Richard Solomon here, returning with City Council Candidate Dan Cox, City of Glen Cove. Let me ask you a question. One of the big issues that is in the current 2015 campaign for the City Council seat is the Glen Cove Waterfront. Let's talk about that.
Well, Rich, that's been going on for 24 years. They've been talking about this because it's originally a site that was environmentally unusable and needed to be cleaned up. A couple of corporations were down there that had dumped toxic waste into the area for decades, and it has been cleaned up. And the city wants to develop its prime real estate. I mean, it's waterfront property, and you talk waterfront property on Long Island, you're talking about really high-end real estate. And the plan down there is for a very large complex. And there's been some controversy because of the size of the complex, the view that people will have from our neighbors over in Seacliff. And the plan has changed time and time again, and they've finally gotten to a point where I think we're going to be turning shovels in the spring. At least that's according to our current mayor. There were some votes that were taken this year by the planning board with some changes that were made to the plan that have made it to the point where we may be able to finally sell the first parcel of property down there to the developer, which will be a windfall for the city of about $3.8 million to apply to our budget for next year. And we'll take Glen Cove to the next step of that project, which would be the phase one of the project, which is what our residents know as the east end of the project. And then the west end of the project is where originally there was this very large hotel and a couple of towers. That was the part that no one liked. That's been changed into one 11-story tower, a 5-story building next to it, and a large space in between, a large green open park space between that part of the project and the east end of the project. So it's a much better project today than it was even 6 months ago or a year ago. But it's taken a long time to get this thing going. Again, for reasons that you and I spoke of before, about the 2-year term for mayor. If you get a change in mayor every 2 years, the priorities change in town. And sometimes projects don't get started, get stopped, and some that never get started because of the way we turn over government in this town. So one of the reasons why I'm running and I'm supporting the incumbent mayor is to continue the work on that waterfront project. Now, that waterfront project is a long-term project, and it's great, but it really doesn't serve, for me personally, the needs of the city at this point in time, except for the money that's coming in. We have other projects that I hope we'll talk about that will actually be more beneficial to the city in the short term and the long term than the waterfront. But the waterfront needs to happen for Glen Cove to be a viable city, because if we don't expand the tax base and start bringing in more tax money, we won't be able to stabilize the tax rate. And we've lost a lot of industry in Glen Cove. We lost major industries. We lost Conica. We lost Photo Circus. We lost Paul Corporation, all in the last 10 or 15 years, and those have come off the tax rolls. We also, this year, had a $51 million reduction in the assessed value of property in Glen Cove, and we need to build that back up. We need to build more so we can build up the assessment value of the town so we don't have to raise taxes every 2 years, or every year for that matter, on our residents. It will become another place on Long Island that's unlivable for young people if we don't expand the tax base and stabilize the real estate taxes here in town.
Right, and now that's a big problem that when you talk about the young people, because if people can't afford to buy a home, start a family, afford the school taxes and whatever, you're essentially going to have a very big gap between the generations.
Well, one of the things that I've been talking about is millennials. Now, I have 4 children. They age between 18 and 29, and they're millennials. And I work at a university where they're all millennials, and I've been dealing with these kids for the last 15 years. They're very different than us, than our generation or my parents' generation. They want things differently. They don't mind living in a condominium. They don't mind living in an apartment as long as it's within walking distance of the things that they like. Good restaurants, convenience food, places like Starbucks and Panera, and bars and restaurants that they like to go to. They ride bicycles. They're more likely to be more tech savvy. They're more likely to be more into solar and environmental issues. And Glen Cove is not achieving that. We're not creating an environment for the next largest generation. When the boomers, within the next 5 years, the boomers are going to be a smaller generation than the millennials, and they are going to need a place to live, to work. But I know them.
Grow.
I know them. My own children tell me, Dad, I don't think I'm going to own a house because I've seen the way you and Mom have struggled to maintain it, to pay for it, to take care of it. It's a lot of work. I'll live in a condo. I'll live in an apartment. Now, they say that now, but once they have 2 or 3 kids, then they're going to want this house in the suburbs. But I think, by and large, a lot of our millennials who are getting married later, are doing more things together as couples, want to live in that kind of environment, and that's an environment we have to build here in Glen Cove. And there's a project that's on the books that should be moving hopefully quickly in our downtown area, is a place called the Piazza, which is fits perfectly what the millennials want and need, and will help revive our downtown. So between the Waterfront's a great project, it's a long-term project, but the Piazza project downtown is more in line in what I feel should be what we need for the next generation of residents here in Glen Cove, which are these highly educated, tech-savvy, environmentally smart, energetic millennial kids.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm talking about when I talk to people. You know, we have a great support system in Glen Cove for our senior citizens, and we're not going to give up on that. We're going to keep that going. But until we turn Glen Cove into a place that's very attractive to this millennial generation, we're going to have difficulty stabilizing our tax rate and bringing in more businesses. That's my personal feeling about that.
All right, so let's hit the social media and get the millennials who are good with that on board. And again, what's that social media? With Facebook.com?
Facebook.com, and when you get there, just search for Glen Cove Democrats.
All right, thank you.